The caveman skill that modern humans completely forgot. Imagine waking up tomorrow with no phone, no internet, no fridge, just you, the cold morning air, and a land filled with predators that see you as lunch. No tools, no shelter, no plan. Would you survive past sunset? For hundreds of thousands of years, our ancestors lived like this every single day, not just surviving, but mastering a skill so vital, so deeply wired into the human brain, that it meant the difference between life and death. Today, that skill has almost completely vanished, and most of us don't even know we've lost it. Before fire and tools, the original human advantage, before there were stone blades or sharpened spears, before fire painted the night sky with safety and warmth, humans were nothing more than soft-skinned primates walking a dangerous earth. We had no claws, no fangs, no thick hide. We couldn't run as fast as a cheetah, leap like a leopard, or crush bones like a hyena. In the grand hierarchy of predators, we didn't belong anywhere near the top. In fact, for much of our early existence, we weren't hunters at all. We were prey. And yet, somehow, we survived. To understand this, you have to imagine their world. Endless grasslands stretching to the horizon, forests that whispered with hidden eyes, and rivers where crocodiles waited, motionless as stone. Danger wasn't a rare event, it was the background noise of life. Every step beyond the safety of the group meant stepping into someone else's hunting ground. So how did they do it? How did fragile, slow, and underpowered creatures endure in a world where almost everything was stronger, faster, and better armed? The answer wasn't in the body, it was in the mind. Long before fire, humans had already developed something extraordinary. The ability to anticipate. The caveman skill we've all but lost today was the deep, instinctive art of reading the world, predicting what would happen next before it happened. They didn't stumble into danger, they sensed it coming. They didn't find food by luck. They knew where it would be before it was there. It was more than awareness. Awareness is passive. This was active, almost aggressive thinking, seeing patterns, remembering the smallest details, and connecting them faster than their predators could act. The rustle in the grass wasn't just noise, it was a story. The fading scent on the wind wasn't just a smell, it was a clock ticking down on an opportunity. For early humans, every moment was a puzzle, and they got very, very good at solving it. If you think about it, that skill was their real weapon. Not fire, not stone, not muscle. It was the ability to think one step ahead, to live in a constant state of strategic anticipation. They became masters of reading the land like a map, predicting the behavior of other animals, and even manipulating outcomes. This mental edge was so powerful that it eventually flipped the food chain upside down. But at this point in history, it was still about survival. Finding water before dehydration, avoiding a predator before it spotted them, and knowing which path would lead to food and which would lead to death. Today, we've buried that skill under the noise of modern life. We outsource our awareness to GPS, weather apps, and news feeds. But our ancestors, they carried the map, the forecast, and the plan all in their head, and it was razor sharp. This was the birth of the human advantage. And in the chapters ahead, you'll see how it turned a vulnerable prey animal into the most dominant predator Earth has ever seen. Picture an early human standing at the edge of a savanna, bare feet pressing into warm soil. The sun is dipping low, casting long shadows that stretch like spears across the grass. Somewhere beyond that golden field, something moves. Not enough to be seen clearly, but enough to be felt. A lion, a herd of antelope. The difference meant life or death. This is where the ancient skill came alive. The ability to read invisible information. Every tiny detail mattered. The silence of the birds told one story. The fresh crack of a twig told another. Even the direction of the wind was a sentence in the language of survival. Modern humans walk past hundreds of such signs every day, without noticing them. But for our ancestors, noticing was everything. It wasn't optional. It was the baseline requirement of existence. The early human didn't have a watch, but they knew the time from the position of the sun, the color of the sky, and the length of the shadows. They didn't have a calendar, but they read the migration of animals, the growth of plants, and the smell of the air to predict the change of seasons. We often call this intuition, but it was more precise than that. It was trained awareness, carved by repetition and necessity. Every success sharpened it. Every mistake that led to danger made it stronger. Unlike most predators who rely on instinct alone, humans combine instinct with memory, analysis, and planning. And it wasn't just about avoiding predators, it was about opportunity. If a herd of gazelles had passed through the area, early humans could tell how long ago they'd been there by the freshness of droppings, the springiness of the trampled grass, and the fading scent in the wind that told them whether to follow or move on. This skill was so deeply ingrained that children learned it from the moment they could walk. They followed their parents and older hunters, not just watching what they did, but how they looked at the world. A child might not understand the science of animal behavior, but they could sense the tension in a parent's body when danger was near. Over time, that tension became their own signal, an invisible alarm system running in the background of their mind. What's striking is that this wasn't considered special knowledge. It was common knowledge. The ability to read the land and anticipate life's next move wasn't a talent you bragged about. It was as normal as breathing. Everyone had it. Everyone needed it. Some anthropologists believe this constant mental sharpening is what accelerated human brain development more than anything else. The necessity of interpreting signs, making decisions under pressure, and planning for multiple possible futures built neural pathways modern life simply doesn't demand anymore. And here's the irony. The very skill that made us human is the one most humans no longer use. The turning point came when early humans realized this skill. This ability to anticipate and read the land could do more than just keep them alive. It could flip the balance of power. At first it was defensive, spotting danger before danger spotted them, predicting where a predator would move and avoiding it entirely. But slowly, the same awareness began to turn outward, toward opportunity, toward hunting, toward controlling the environment rather than merely surviving in it. It started with scavenging. Humans would follow the calls of vultures circling above, knowing a fresh carcass lay somewhere beyond the horizon. They learned to approach cautiously, waiting for lions or hyenas to feed and leave scraps. But this wasn't random, it was timed. They knew how long it took for predators to finish a kill. They knew when to approach without risking an attack. Then came the real breakthrough: pattern recognition and prey. By watching herds over seasons, humans learned migration routes. They discovered that animals returned to the same waterholes, followed the same paths, and behaved predictably under certain conditions. And with that knowledge, the hunter was born. Even without weapons, humans began to manipulate the hunt. They would position themselves along a known path, or slowly move in a way that steered an animal toward exhaustion. They didn't need to be faster, they only needed to be relentless. This was a revolutionary shift in the food chain. Every other predator on Earth relied on bursts of speed or brute strength. Humans introduced a new predator type, one that could think so far ahead that the prey never stood a chance. But it wasn't just hunting animals. This skill shaped the way humans interacted with everything around them. They began to map their territory in mental detail. Every water source, every safe shelter, every place where danger tended to lurk. They could cross vast distances without getting lost, because the land itself was stored in their memory. The most fascinating part: this knowledge was communal. It wasn't locked in one hunter's mind. It was shared through stories, gestures, and early forms of language. Around campfires, they didn't just talk about the day. They recorded the day in memory for the next hunt, passing down not just events but the invisible threads of cause and effect that connected them. And when this skill stopped being merely a survival mechanism, it became the blueprint for human dominance. Every invention, from traps to spears to organized hunts, began as a thought in the mind of someone who could see further ahead than anyone else. It all began here, with the caveman skill of strategic anticipation. A skill that today, most of us have let atrophy to the point of extinction. In the next chapter, we'll see what happened when humans applied this skill to one of the most extraordinary hunting methods in history, one that required no weapons at all. The hunt without weapons. The sun was merciless. It baked the earth until the air shimmered in waves. The grass was dry, brittle, whispering in the heat. Somewhere in that shimmering expanse, an antelope grazed, unaware that it had already been chosen. There were no arrows, no spears, no traps, just a group of lean, sun-darkened humans, standing far in the distance, watching. This was persistence hunting, the purest form of human predation, and it didn't require speed, strength, or even weapons. It required something else entirely: the ability to outlast. Here's how it worked. Every animal on Earth has a limit, a point where the body overheats, where muscle burns so much energy it can't continue. Predators like lions and cheetahs hit that limit fast, because their power comes in short, explosive bursts. They sprint, they kill, they rest. Humans, we traded speed for something far rarer: endurance. Our ancestors learned that if you could track an animal long enough, keeping it running in the heat of the day, it would eventually collapse from exhaustion. It didn't matter if it was faster. The chase wasn't about the first mile. It was about the 10th, the 15th, the 20th. The hunt would begin with observation. The humans would spot a herd in the distance and choose one target, usually the one that looked slightly injured, older, or separated from the others. The goal wasn't to scare the whole herd. It was to pressure one animal until it could no longer keep up. Then the chase began. Not a sprint, not even a jog, just a steady, relentless pace. The hunters followed the animal's trail, using every ounce of their tracking skill. A broken stem, a hoofprint in the dust, the disturbed flight of a bird. These were the breadcrumbs. The antelope would sprint away, disappearing from sight, but humans didn't panic. They knew they would find it again, because they could read the land like a book. Ours would pass. The sun would climb higher, cooking the air. The hunter's bare skin allowed heat to escape through sweat, an ability most mammals lack. The animal, covered in thick fur, couldn't cool down fast enough. By the third or fourth cycle of running and resting, the animal would begin to slow. Its breath would come in ragged bursts. The hunters didn't need to touch it. They just needed to keep it moving, keep its body overheating, until finally, it would stop. And there it was. The moment when the food chain shifted, not with a kill from strength, but with victory from patience and strategy. Persistence hunting wasn't just a method, it was a philosophy. You, Dan T, have to be the fastest. You only have to be the one who never stops. The hunt began at first light. The grass still held a thin sheen of dew, but already the air was warming. A small band of hunters stood together, scanning the horizon. Somewhere out there, hidden by the slow rise of the land, a herd of kudu moved toward their morning grazing ground. The decision came quickly. A young male, limping ever so slightly, was chosen. He didn't know it yet, but every step from here on was a step toward collapse. The hunters began their approach, keeping just far enough to avoid a full-blown stampede. They didn't want chaos. They wanted precision. The kudu saw them, bolted for a short distance, then stopped to feed again. The same mistake prey had made for hundreds of thousands of years. Most predators would have been left behind by that first sprint. Humans, however, did not sprint. They moved steadily, unhurried, their breathing calm. Every few minutes, one hunter would step ahead, tracking the kudu's path, a scuff mark on the earth, a droplet of saliva from its open mouth, a swaying patch of grass. The others followed in a loose line, their eyes scanning for the next sign. By midday, the sun was relentless. Shadows were shrinking, the air pressing down like a weight. The kudu's sprints grew shorter, its rests longer. But the hunters were built for this. Bare skin radiating heat, sweat cooling their bodies, muscles tuned for endurance. They weren't just chasing, they were wearing the animal down. Every time the kudu slowed, the hunters appeared again, silent and steady, forcing it to move. This was the heart of persistence hunting. The psychological war. The prey began to sense there was no escape, no moment to fully rest, no safety in stillness. Hours passed, the kudu's sides heaved, its legs trembled with every stride. The hunters never lost their pace, their eyes locked on the subtle signs of fatigue. The stumble, the lowered head, the way the animal's ears twitched slower in the heat. And then, in the late afternoon, it happened. The kudu stopped running. It turned to face its pursuers, panting so hard its chest shook, its legs buckled. There was no fight left. The hunters closed in, not with shouts of triumph, but with quiet efficiency. This was food for the group, for the children waiting miles away, for the survival of their people. They had taken down a powerful animal without a single weapon, only with patience, teamwork, and a skill so ancient it is almost alien to us now. For them, this wasn't an extraordinary day. It was simply what humans did. Persistence hunting worked for one simple reason. Humans evolved to be the marathon runners of the animal kingdom. We may not look like predators built for the chase, but our bodies hide a set of remarkable advantages designed for exactly this kind of hunt. First, there's sweating. Most mammals, including antelope and big cats, can't regulate heat efficiently while running. Their fur traps heat, and panting can't keep up when the body is working at full speed. Humans, on the other hand, can sweat across the entire surface of our skin, cooling us as we move, allowing us to keep going long after other animals must stop. Then there's our upright posture. Running on two legs frees our upper bodies from the intense up and down pounding that four-legged runners endure. It's less efficient for speed, but perfect for maintaining a steady pace over hours. Our long legs, spring-like tendons, and even the arch of our feet evolved to store and release energy with every step, reducing fatigue. But the real secret weapon? The mind. Persistence hunting isn't about chasing an animal blindly. It's about constant observation and decision-making skills our ancestors honed to a razor's edge. Every moment of the hunt is a calculation. Which direction is the wind blowing? Is the animal favoring one leg? Has it veered toward water or shade? How much energy do we have left? This mental chess game gave humans an edge that no other predator could match. Lions could outrun us, but they couldn't outthink us in the long game. And here's what's truly astonishing. This wasn't rare. In many parts of the prehistoric world, persistence hunting was a common practice, not a last resort. Entire communities relied on it as a dependable way to bring in meat. It wasn't about luck. It was a repeatable, learnable skill. Today, however, very few people could even attempt it. Our physical endurance has eroded through comfort. Our ability to read the land is dulled by technology, and our tolerance for discomfort. The heat, the thirst, the hours of relentless focus is far lower than it was for our ancestors. In losing persistence hunting, we didn't just lose a way to get food, we lost a part of our identity. We lost proof of what humans are capable of when patience and strategy meet unbreakable willpower. And yet, the skill still sleeps in us. Our bodies are still built for it. Our minds still have the wiring for anticipation and pursuit. The question is whether we could ever wake it up again. In the next chapter, we'll step into the mind of the tracker, the human who could see signs where others saw nothing, who could follow a trail invisible to the untrained eye, and who could transform the chaos of the wild into a readable map. The mind of the tracker to most modern eyes. The ground is just dirt. A flat, lifeless surface you walk across without a second thought. But to an ancient tracker, the ground was a living document, a record of every movement, every struggle, every passing shadow that had crossed it. They could see what we can't. A single bent blade of grass could tell them which way an animal had moved. The depth of a hoofprint could reveal how fast it was going. The faintest smear of moisture on a leaf could mean it had brushed past moments ago. For the tracker, the world was alive with clues. They didn't just look, they read. Every track was a sentence, every broken twig a punctuation mark. Together, these formed a story so clear that the tracker could replay events in their mind, like watching a memory that wasn't theirs. This was not magic, it was training. Years of attention so focused that nothing was too small to matter. Children were taught to notice the shape of a footprint, the pattern of disturbed soil, the silence of birds when a predator was near. Over time, their brains rewired themselves to prioritize these details, to automatically filter for patterns others would miss. Tracking wasn't just about sight, it was a symphony of senses. The smell of crushed vegetation, the faint shift in wind carrying the scent of animal sweat, the unnatural stillness in an otherwise noisy patch of forest. A skilled tracker could follow a trail through rocky ground where no footprints remained, simply by reading the subtle disturbances in dust or the angle of scattered stones. But the most astonishing skill was the ability to predict, to know where the animal would be before it got there. This required understanding the prey's habits, its needs, and its fears. Was it moving toward water? Did it choose cover from the midday sun? Would it slow near a narrow pass, wary of ambush? The tracker thought like the hunted. And here's the truth. This skill wasn't a luxury. It was the cornerstone of survival. Without it, persistence hunting was impossible. Without it, a community might starve. A mistake could mean following the wrong trail for hours, or walking straight into a predator's ambush. In the modern world, we've traded this deep connection to the land for speed and convenience. We use GPS to find our way, grocery stores to find our food, and weather apps to tell us when to stay indoors. But the tracker didn't just live in their environment, they were part of it, inseparable from its patterns. In the next section, we'll step deeper into the tracker's mind, following their decisions in real time, as they navigate not just the signs of the hunt, but the dangers of being hunted themselves. The tracker rises before the first light touches the horizon. The world is still blue and cold, the grass wet with dew. In this half-darkness, every sense sharpens. The air carries information. The faint musk of antelope, the sharper temps of hyena, the dry, dusty smell of wind from the east. They start moving, barefoot, feeling the ground as much as seeing it. Every step is deliberate. The eyes sweep in arcs, scanning for the smallest inconsistencies. A clump of grass flattened in a way that doesn't match the wind, a dark spot in the soil where moisture from an animal's hoof hasn't yet evaporated. Ahead, the faint outline of a print appears, not deep enough to be recent, but fresh enough to follow. The edges are crisp, the soil still cool inside. The tracker leans close, studying the shape. This isn't just an antelope. It's the antelope they've been following for 2 days. They know it by the slight splay of its right hoof. They move on, eyes flicking constantly between the ground and the horizon. Tracking isn't about staring at one spot, it's about holding the whole landscape in your mind at once. Knowing where you've been, where you're going, and what's hiding in between. Half an hour later, the trail cuts across a patch of rocky soil. Most people would lose it here, the prints vanish, but the tracker doesn't stop. They note the angle of the last hoofprint, glance ahead, and spot a single pebble turned over, its underside darker from the morning damp. A step, another. Then, a faint scuff, where something brushed past a stone. The trail is alive again. As the sun climbs, so does the risk. Out here, the hunter is never the only one searching for prey. The tracker knows lions are nearby. They saw the faint drag marks of a kill earlier, and the vultures are still circling lazily in the distance. Every step is a balance between moving quickly enough to close in on the antelope, and slowly enough to avoid walking into another predator's path. Then, a shift in the air. Warm wind from the south, carrying a stronger scent of the antelope. They're closer now. The tracker pauses, kneeling to press a hand against the ground. Warm. The animal passed through less than an hour ago. Their breathing slows. Every movement becomes quieter, more deliberate. From here, it's no longer about finding the trail, it's about not being noticed. The hunt has entered its final, most delicate phase. In this moment, the tracker's mind holds a living map, not just of the land, but of every heartbeat in it. They know where the prey is moving, they know where the predators are lurking, and they know exactly how to turn the next few hours into a kill. The antelope is close now. The signs are everywhere. Grass bent in a fresh arc, a sharp hoof print pressed deep into soft soil, and the lingering warmth in the ground that tells the tracker they are within minutes of sighting it. But closing the gap isn't just a matter of walking faster. This is the most dangerous stage of the hunt. Move too quickly, and the prey bolts into another long run. Move too slowly, and the cooling afternoon air gives it a chance to recover. The tracker adjusts pace, letting instinct and experience decide every step. They angle slightly downwind so their scent won't carry. Their eyes dart from the ground to the tree line, to the shadows that ripple across the grass. Somewhere ahead, the animal is grazing, ears twitching for danger. Then, a flicker of movement, just the tip of a horn catching a shaft of sunlight. The tracker freezes. Every muscle stills. This is not the time to attack. Not yet. The goal is exhaustion, not surprise. They retreat slightly, circling wide to reappear in the animal's periphery, keeping it on the move. The antelope lifts its head, ears pricked, then begins to trot away. Not full speed, but enough to keep its muscles burning and its breathing ragged. This game repeats again and again over the next hour. Each time the antelope slows, the tracker reappears. Each time it runs, it loses more of its strength. The balance is delicate, pressure without panic, pursuit without losing sight. Finally, the signs become undeniable. The animal's steps shorten, its head hangs low. Foam gathers at the edges of its mouth. The tracker can hear its labored breathing even from a distance. It is reaching the point every persistence hunter waits for. The point of collapse. The last approach is silent. The tracker moves in, step by step, until they are close enough to see the tremor in the animal's flanks. The antelope stumbles, tries to rise, and stumbles again. It doesn't run. It can't. The end comes not with a dramatic charge, but with quiet inevitability. A quick, clean dispatch. Not for sport, but for survival. The tracker kneels beside the animal, placing a hand on its warm hide, feeling the final shudder of life. There is no celebration, no shout of victory, just gratitude. This hunt will feed the people, clothe them, and provide tools from the bones and sinew. The tracker rises, scanning the land one last time before the butchering begins. In their mind, they are already storing the details of the day. The wind, the patterns, the decisions that led to success. Those lessons will be passed on, embedded into the collective memory of the group. This was more than tracking. It was a conversation with the land, one spoken fluently by those who lived close enough to hear it. In the next chapter, we'll see how this ability, this mental and physical mastery, began to fade as humans built cities, invented machines, and turned their backs on the wild. The fire in the blood, it began with hunger. Not the light discomfort you feel when you've skipped breakfast. Not the mild inconvenience of waiting in line for a meal. No, this was the kind of hunger that made your stomach ache so hard it felt like your insides were being eaten from within. The kind that stripped away every other thought, every other priority, until there was only one mission left in the mind: find food or die trying. Our ancestors didn't hunt for sport. They hunted because the alternative was death. Every step across the open plain was a gamble: expose yourself to the predators, or starve in the shadows. The choice was always the same. And so, the hunt began. The air was cold that morning, the wind slicing against skin. The tribe moved in silence, their eyes scanning for tracks in the mud, ears straining for the faintest rustle in the tall grass. Then footprints, large, fresh. A beast had passed this way, and not long ago. The hunters exchanged glances. They knew the risk. The animal would be dangerous, capable of crushing bones with a single blow, but they also knew something else: if they killed it, the tribe would eat for days. Spears were gripped tighter, breath slowed, muscles tensed. The stalk began. Every movement was calculated, every footstep silent. They became shadows in the grass, predators without a sound. The blood in their veins seemed to thrum with the rhythm of the earth itself, every heartbeat sensing with the pulse of the hunt. They were not yet the masters of this world, but in that moment, they were its most dangerous force. Because hunger had awakened something primal, something unstoppable, and that fire in their blood would one day change the fate of our species. They had no word for strategy, yet every step, every breath, every heartbeat was strategy in motion. The hunt began long before the first spear was thrown. It started in silence, eyes scanning the horizon, searching for the flicker of movement in tall grass, feet pressing gently into the dirt, feeling the vibrations of life, nostrils flaring to catch the faintest scent of prey carried on the wind. The mammoth did not know it yet, but the humans had already begun the war. For hours, they followed not with the reckless rush of predators who kill in moments, but with the patience of predators who kill in days. They were relentless shadows, silent ghosts who moved when the wind moved, who stopped when the herd stopped. And when the moment came, it was not chaos, it was calculation. One hunter would step into the open, drawing the beast's attention, while the others circled like wolves with human minds. The spears didn't just fly, they spoke. Each throw said, "We are here, we are coming, you will fall." By the time the mammoth's knees buckled, the humans were already thinking ahead: where to cut, how to preserve the meat, how to use every tendon, every bone, every scrap of hide. Nothing was wasted, not because of kindness, but because waste meant death. In this world, to be careless was to be extinct. The hunt at the edge of extinction. The forest was alive with whispers. Leaves trembled, though there was no wind. Every shadow seemed to breathe. Every branch seemed ready to snap. And at the heart of it, the clan moved in silence. Their bodies low, their eyes locked on a single target that could decide whether they lived another week or starved by the next moon. The prey was no ordinary animal. It was a creature they had never dared to challenge before. An old bull aurochs, massive and scarred from years of battles. His horns were curved like the blades of the gods, his muscles rippling with a strength that could shatter bone in a heartbeat. He stood in a clearing, pawing at the ground, his breath rising like smoke in the cold morning air. The elders had warned them, one mistake, and the hunt would end with death, not the praise. There's the leader. Kale tightened his grip on the sharpened spear. This was not just a hunt. This was a declaration. If they could bring down the aurochs, the clan would have meat, hide, bone, and honor. If they failed, they would have nothing but the weight of loss. They moved in a half circle, each step calculated. The women, skilled in stealth, flanked to the left, carrying stones ready to distract and wound. The young hunters, faster on their feet, crept in from the right. Kale and two of the strongest men advanced from the front, knowing full well that when the animal charged, they would be the first in its path. The first throw came from the shadows, a spear slicing through the cold air and striking deep into the auroch's side. It bellowed, a sound so powerful it shook the marrow in their bones. Then it charged. The ground shook. Kale roared, not in fear, but to match the beast's fury. Another spear struck, another stone cracked against its skull. Blood ran down its flank, but the aurochs did not slow. And then, the moment of truth, as it lunged at Kale, he planted his feet, braced his spear, and drove it forward with every ounce of strength he had. The sharpened tip found its mark. The beast stumbled, collapsed to its knees, and fell with a final thunderous exhale. For a moment, no one moved. The forest fell silent again, as if the world itself paused to acknowledge what had just happened. They had done it. They had brought down the impossible. The clan gathered around the fallen giant. Some touched its hide in silent respect. Others already began preparing the kill for transport. The victory was more than survival. It was proof to themselves, to the spirits, to the earth, that they were no longer simply prey in this world. They were hunters at the edge of extinction, fighting not only for life, but for dominance. Far away, beyond the hills, other clans would hear of this hunt, and the legend of Kale's clan, the day they faced the aurochs and did not falter, would be carried in stories for generations. And yet, deep within the trees, unseen eyes watched. The next challenge was already moving closer. The morning mist curled low over the savannah, shrouding the land in a gray veil that blurred the horizon. The air was heavy, thick with the scent of wet earth and distant rain, and every sound seemed muffled except for the pounding of hearts. The hunting party stood silent, crouched in the shadows of acacia trees, their breaths rising in faint clouds. They had followed the herd for 2 days. Massive, horned beast aurochs, heavier and more dangerous than any animal the clan had yet taken down. One strike from those horns could impale a man, one charge could crush bone. But if the hunters succeeded, the meat, hide, and bone would sustain the tribe for many cycles of the moon. Failure meant more than going hungry. It meant weakness, sickness, and death stalking their shelters. Corin, the eldest hunter, crouched at the front. His eyes, lined with years of sun and wind, scanned the plain. Every movement of grass, every flicker of shadow, he read like a story written by the land. His voice, when it came, was barely more than a breath. Wind from the east. They will smell us if we circle too wide. Behind him, the younger hunters, leaner, hungrier, with the fire of untested courage, shifted nervously. They carried spears tipped with sharpened stone, the shafts wrapped in sinew. Each spear was more than a weapon. It was a promise, carved by the hands of fathers and grandfathers, passed down to spill blood when the moment came. But hunting aurochs was no simple chase. It was war. The plan was to drive the herd toward the marsh, where the ground turned soft and treacherous. There, the beasts would be slowed, their weight sinking in the mud, their great power reduced to desperate thrashing. It was the only way to face them without being crushed under their hooves. A faint rumble carried through the ground hoofs. The herd was moving. Corin raised his hand, the signal to prepare. Muscles tensed, breath slowed. Eyes narrowed on the shifting shadows ahead. Somewhere in the mist, a calf bleated, and the deep answering grunt of its mother rolled across the plain. That was the sound of life and of death to come. They began to move, silent as stalking cats, feet finding the ground between stones and roots. Every step was measured. Every movement was a prayer that the wind would not betray them. Somewhere deep in each hunter's chest, instinct burned, the same instinct that had guided their kind since the first spark of fire lit the night. This was the ancient dance. Predator and prey, hunger and survival, courage and fear walking side by side. And before the sun climbed high, blood would soak the earth. The sun climbed higher, spilling molten light across the endless horizon. It was the dry season, and the savannah lay bare, its grasses brittle, its waterholes shrinking to muddy basins. This was the season that tested every living thing, stripping away weakness, leaving only those who could adapt. The clan moved in tight formation, scanning the parched earth for signs of life. Every decision now mattered. A wrong step toward the wrong hunting ground could cost them days of wasted energy. Hunger was not a mild discomfort. Here it was a predator in its own right, patient, stalking, waiting for them to falter. A faint rustle in the wind carried a scent, faint but distinct. Meat. The leader froze mid-step, nostrils flaring. Without a word, he crouched, signaling the others to stay low. Following the scent, they moved like shadows over the scorched ground, weaving between acacia trees until the scene emerged before them. A carcass, stripped ribs gleamed in the sun, flies swarming in a restless cloud. But it wasn't abandoned, it was guarded. 3 hyenas circled possessively, their thick necks jerking in warning, teeth bared in grotesque grins. The decision was dangerous. Confronting hyenas meant risking injury, but the meat could mean survival for the entire clan. The leader's eyes narrowed. This wasn't just about food, this was about dominance, about sending a message to the predators of the savannah. We are not scavengers, we are competitors. The group spread out in a half circle, gripping their sharpened spears. The air grew electric. A low growl rippled from the hyenas, but they didn't back away. This was going to be a standoff, a battle of fear versus hunger. Then, in a moment that would define them, the leader stepped forward, pounding his spear into the ground and letting out a deep guttural roar, an echo of something primal, something older than words. The savannah seemed to hold its breath. The question now was simple. Who would break first, the hyenas or the humans? The fire burned low now, its once fierce flames reduced to glowing embers that pulsed like the heartbeat of the camp. The air was heavy with the scent of roasted meat and charred wood, but beneath it lingered another smell, anticipation. Tomorrow, they would leave the safety of these rocks and venture deep into the unknown. Karo sat apart from the others, sharpening his spear. Each scrape of stone against bone was slow, deliberate. His eyes were fixed not on the weapon, but on the darkness beyond the fire's reach. Somewhere out there a predator was watching. He could feel it not in sight or sound, but in the ancient part of his mind that had never stopped scanning for danger. Beside the fire, Merak spoke in low tones to the younger hunters, passing down the old tactics of the hunt: how to read the wind, how to move without sound, how to strike without hesitation. His voice was calm, but each lesson carried the weight of survival. One mistake in the hunt could mean a body never returned. The women gathered the leftover embers into clay pots, guarding them like treasure. In the wild, fire was life, and no one knew when they might find it again. Children were pulled close, their eyes wide as they listened to the old stories, tales of the first kill, of the beasts that once ruled before men learned to stand together. Above them, the moon cut through the night clouds like a silver blade, casting a pale light over the camp. Somewhere in the trees, a branch snapped. Every head turned, spears were lifted, hearts pounded. The shadows stayed still. It was nothing, or perhaps it was something clever enough to wait. The night stretched on, quiet but tense. Tomorrow, they would hunt not just for food, but for dominance. In this world, to hesitate was to be prey. And as the last embers faded into the dark, the tribe knew only one truth mattered here. Those who do not kill will be killed.